Hola mis amores, welcome back to another video. My name is Vanessa and I want to start my classic reading journey. With the exception of Toni Morrison, The Bluest Eye, and Toni Morrison, Beloved, the last time that I read a classic was back in high school or maybe university. I honestly can't remember. And to be honest with you, I did not enjoy my time. And I think a part of that partially was because it's a controlled environment where there was a requirement. You really had to read these classics for homework, right? Instead of being able to read them for leisure purposes and whatnot. When you're reading something in a controlled environment, when you're being forced to read something, it sort of takes away that element of fun. So when I started reading again, I was like, yeah, no, I'm not going anywhere near any classics, but they're so important, right? Classics offer so many universal truths when it comes to the human experience and the human condition. And I also feel like if you truly want to understand your contemporary fiction books on a whole deeper level, I feel like you do have to read classics because a lot of the references and a lot of the things that come up in contemporary fiction books, they started here, you know? And I am someone that wants to be well-read. I want to read diversely. I talk a lot about that on my channel. And I'm not reading enough classics, if at all, really, with the exception, of course, of those two Toni Morrison books. So about 2 months ago, I was motivated by the surge of classic reading on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. And I think it's great. I think it's amazing that more people are reading classics. And so yeah, about 2 months ago, I was really motivated and inspired. And I told myself that I would start my classic reading journey. The problem is I wasn't exactly sure where I wanted to begin. So I collected and started buying a whole bunch of different classics that spoke to me, that sort of had my name on them. And now that I have all of my classics in, or at least the ones that I have been collecting, I thought that I should do a classics haul, show you guys the classics that I have purchased and where I intend to start. And I was thinking to myself that the way that I want to organize this video, I want to organize this video into beginner friendly, intermediate, and advanced. The beginner-friendly classics are for people who are also just starting their classic reading journey and they want to know where to begin, where to start. So that's how I'm going to organize the video. Let me know in the comment section if you agree with my categories. I am new to classic reading, so I might be totally off in terms of what I consider beginner-friendly, intermediate, and advanced. So let me know in the comment section whether or not you agree. So yeah, let's begin. Of course, I had to pick up some John Steinbeck. I have been seeing John Steinbeck all over the place, particularly East of Eden. When I first purchased all of these classics, I had no idea where I wanted to start, like where I wanted to begin. But I have decided to begin with East of Eden. As you can see, I've already started East of Eden. I actually started this book early August, and so far, so good. It is really, really good, very entertaining. It is very accessible, very readable. But I was so intimidated by East of Eden initially because of all of the biblical references. I thought that it was going to be very philosophical in nature. I'm currently almost done with part 2 and I will be moving on to part 3. This essentially is a multi-generational family saga. It follows the Hamiltons and the Trask family. They all reside in this farmland in Salinas Valley that is in Northern California. And our narrator, I'm not going to spoil who that is, but our narrator is essentially telling us about the lives of these two families, how they intersect, how they interconnect, and also the book explores the concept and the idea of free will, nurture versus nature, and also good versus evil. It draws inspiration from the first chapters of the book of Genesis, but it's not as philosophical as I thought it would be, and it's definitely not as intimidating. So this is where I have decided to start. This is the Steinbeck collection. And then somehow I ended up with another copy. This is the Penguin Classics edition. And to be honest with you, I like this one a whole lot better. It has a large print, which makes the reading experience a lot more enjoyable. And then this one has like that fine print that you would come to expect and find in a classic. So I love this edition a whole lot more than this one. I'll probably give this one away. I don't need 2 copies, but yeah, this is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. Again, I've been seeing his work all over the place and I'm like, I need to know, what is so amazing about East of Eden? This was a matter of FOMO, like straight up. I had serious FOMO and I was like, I definitely need to read some Steinbeck because I need to see what the hype is all about. And I am here to tell you that the hype over over East of Eden is absolutely warranted. It is so good. I almost don't want to put it down, and I can see this being one of my top reads of the year. For sure. The other John Steinbeck book that I picked up is The Grapes of Wrath. This one initially spoke to me a little bit more. This one is another generational family saga type of thing, and we are following a family of sharecroppers, and they are enduring the Great Depression. Thousands of people are leaving the state of Oklahoma amid the Great Depression, so this family makes the Great Migration, if you will, to California in search of better opportunities. Along the way, they encounter hardship and exploitation, and it's all about the Great Depression and its impact on this one family. So it, just spoke to me a little bit more, but I will say that after, reading East of Eden, this is not intimidating at all. It is very readable, almost reads contemporary. But I am excited to get into The Grapes of Wrath. I'm actually excited to get into Steinbeck's entire catalog because he is just a genius. He's a literary genius. I'm falling in love with his writing style. So both of these, I'm gonna say, feel beginner friendly, especially East of Eden, again, because it's so readable. So next up, I got some NYRB classics. Now this is interesting because when I started seeing NYRB all over the place, I was like, what is the deal about all of these books? They all sort of have this title box here. They have the cutest covers, I feel, and a lot of it is a translated literature. So I looked up New York Review Books, which is what NYRB stands for, and they apparently are a publishing house that is dedicated to finding literature and books that have been out of print. They are often obscure pieces of literature, and oftentimes they're also translated literature from all over the world. And again, they spoke to me because of all of the cute covers. And so this is where I started when it comes to NYRB. I have Notes of a Crocodile. This one is by Q Myogene. I hope that I'm pronouncing that right. And this one follows a pack or a collective of queer misfits. They all go to this prestigious university, and I believe our main character, who is an anonymous main character, is in love or is infatuated by a much older woman at the university, and all of their friends are these queer misfits that get into all sorts of trouble. So it sounds very much coming of age, and a lot of people have raved about this book and said that this book has absolutely changed their lives. So I'm excited to give this one a read. It takes place in Taipei in the late 1980s. I also picked up two books by Magda Szabo. She is based out of Hungary, so she's a Hungarian author, very, very well known, very popular, and she tends to write a lot of World War II narratives, and anything World War II is something that I'm going to eat up every single time, okay? So I was like, yes, give me some Magda Szabo. I've heard really, really good things about her. So I picked up The Catalan Street. This follows three interconnected families as they navigate and endure these socio-political conditions as they are ever so changing because of World War II. I believe the Nazis invaded Hungary, and these three families have to move into one single apartment, and they have to navigate friendship and relationships, and also survivor's guilt because some members of the family are deported to concentration camps and death camps as well. So I'm excited to give this one a read. Again, anything World War II, I'm going to eat up. And then there's Abigail, and Abigail is all about this free-spirited wanderlust of a young teenage girl, and she is sent off to this repressive, very religious boarding school after her dad is sent off to go fight in the war. At this boarding school, she has to come of age, so it's another coming of age narrative, and it's also a classic boarding school story. And I love me a story that takes place in a boarding school, okay? Controlled environments, coming of age is something that I'm also going to eat up. So yeah, I'm excited to read Abigail as well. Now the thing is about NYRB is when I go and flip through the pages, it comes off very like contemporary, easy to read type of thing. So that's why I'm going to put them in the beginner category. I haven't read any NYRB so far, but yeah. I actually haven't read anything from this author, and that would be James Baldwin, which is crazy. It's crazy, like what? I haven't read any James Baldwin. I'm somewhat embarrassed to share that with you guys, but yeah. So this would be my first James Baldwin read. I picked up Giovanni's Room. Of course, he has an expansive catalog. I had no idea where to begin when it comes to Baldwin. So I started here, which is one of his more popular books. Giovanni's Room is about our main character. I believe he arrives in Paris and he begins a relationship with a man while he is engaged to a woman. And this man, the man that he becomes infatuated with, is going to be executed shortly. So it sounds messy, but it also sounds very heartbreaking. I am excited to give it a read. Everybody recommends this one during Pride Month, but yeah, James Baldwin, it sounds like he explores gender identity and Black masculinity and all sorts of different power dynamics. So I'm really excited to read some James Baldwin. So yeah. And the last book that I would consider beginner friendly is Sugar by Bernice McFadden. This is a recommendation hot off of TikTok. I saw this on one of my mutuals profile. She was sharing a lot of different Bernice McFadden recommendations. And I was like, listen, her catalog sounds exactly up my alley. So in Sugar, we're following along our main character. She actually fled to Chicago. She left her very southern Black town in Arkansas, and she fled and left to go find better opportunities in Chicago. However, in Chicago, she entered into the sex work industry, and then she leaves Chicago. She returns back to her southern town, the small town in Arkansas. She's met with a lot of racial hostility and gendered violence, misogyny, cruelty, all sorts of things. And this sort of cruelty is especially unforgiving to women who do not conform, right? So lots of misogyny, lots of racial tension. I am excited once again to get into Bernice McFadden's catalog. So I am happy to have this one on my bookshelf. And yeah, now let's move on to 4 classics that I would consider a little bit more intermediate. Spoiler alert, they're all from Black authors. So yeah. Also, before I begin, they're all what you would consider trauma narratives. And I've gotten some comments on how I read a lot of trauma narratives from Black authors. And I understand that a lot of people want to balance, you know, the amount of trauma that they read about. I understand the need to want to find that balance, right, between how much trauma that you're consuming. However, I think that trauma narratives are important to read about. They're often based in a lot of historical context that I don't feel, especially if you're someone that lives with a marginalized identity, I don't feel that we can ever disassociate from. And I understand not wanting to read about it all the time, but the reality is our material conditions as people living within marginalized communities, they don't change. You know, our material conditions are not changing. So insofar as our material conditions are not improving as a collective, I think that it's very important to read things that are quote unquote trauma narratives. Additionally, a lot of these Black authors were writing during time periods where there was a lot of racial hostility, post-slavery era, writing during segregation, the 1940s, 1950s, 1960s. I mean, these were the times that they were writing in. So of course, they're going to incorporate a lot of like trauma narratives or talk a lot about things like racism, misogyny, gendered violence, racial violence, etc., and so forth. So if you don't want to read books like these, you're free to read whatever it is that you want to read. I don't mind having books like this on my bookshelf and reading them from time to time. That's my little rant. Let's continue with the haul. Starting with The Color Purple. This one is by Alice Walker. I love the movie. I've watched the movie several times. The Color Purple I find to be a little bit more intermediate because it's not written in a very conventional way from what I understand and what I've looked up. It's told through a series of letters, and so it would be considered an epistolatory novel, which again means that it's told through a series of documents. In this case, it's a series of letters between the two sisters that we're following, Nettie and Sally. The story itself takes place during 1909 to 1947, and the two sisters are separated. Of course, there's a lot of racial tension. There's a lot of racial hostility, and these two sisters are having to navigate a lot of intergenerational trauma born out of slavery and the post-slavery era. So I know that this is going to be very heartbreaking. thought-provoking, but it does feel like it's a little bit more intermediate simply because it's not written in a very conventional, linear way. The next one that I think feels a little bit more intermediate is A Native Son by Richard Wright. I've heard that this one is very, very dark. Definitely check your trigger warnings. We are following our main character, who is a Black American man, and he is trapped in extreme, extreme poverty in Southside Chicago in the 1930s. In a moment of moral panic, he commits this horrific crime that is of a racial nature. As a result, we see the intersecting forces of race and class and poverty sort of reign on our main character and completely uproot and change his life forever. So I'm very excited to get into this one, and I don't know if excited is the right word, but I just know that it's going to be very thought-provoking, and I feel like it's one of those books that I need to read. So yes, I picked up Native Son by Richard Wright. I also picked up Corregidora by Gail Jones. Gail Jones is another author that I've been meaning to get into. Her catalog sounds fantastic. In Corregidora, she is exploring the impact of sexual violence as a tool that was often used during slavery. Our main character, Ursa Corregidora, she is trying to piece together her maternal lineage, and her maternal lineage has been shaped by all of this sexual violence, and as a result there's a lot of intergenerational trauma that has been passed down to our main character, and our main character now has to reckon with all of that trauma. Another one where it's like, check your trigger warnings. There's a lot of discussion on sexual violence, especially during the context of slavery. This one, flipping through it, it just gives off the vibe that it would be a little bit more intermediate. I might be completely wrong, but yeah. And last but not least, I picked up The Street by Ann Petrie. So I've been meaning to read Ann Petrie for quite some time. We are following a single Black mother that is trapped in extreme poverty on the streets of Harlem, New York in the 1940s. And during the 1940s, there is rising gendered racial violence, lots of colorism, lots of poverty, etc. and so forth. And she is essentially just trying to survive. I've also heard that this one is very dark. It is very heavy. Check your trigger warnings once again. I've heard really, really good things about The Street, so I am excited as well to get into it. All right, now let's talk about what I would consider a little bit more advanced. And by that I mean that I'm a little bit more intimidated to get into them for one reason or the other. So let's go through them, starting with some Russian classic literature. I have Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, and I had to pick up some Dostoevsky. Now, here's the thing. I remember reading Crime and Punishment in high school or university. I never was able to appreciate the book for what it was, because I'm pretty sure it is really, really good. But I remember reading this in English literature. It's one of those small, like baby, like classics. I hate these. The print is just so fine and small. So I'm not crazy about the edition that I have. I believe it's a, pocket books or something. I don't know. I'm just not crazy about the size and how fine the print is. But in any case, Dostoevsky with Crime and Punishment, I believe our main character commits a crime and he gets away with it. However, he goes through a lot of like internal moral conflict as a result of getting away with this crime. And so on a readability scale, I have heard that this is very readable, it's very accessible, and it's not intimidating to actually read. However, it is very psychological. And when I hear that, I'm like, whoa, it sounds a little bit advanced, okay? So it's the subject matter that I'm like, okay, am I going to be able to, interpret and understand all of this, psychological madness? But no, I picked this one up because it interrogates the ethics of like punishment and crime, of course, and morality, and who gets away with crime and why, from what I understand and from what I remember. So yeah, I have Crime and Punishment. We'll see when I get to it, but yeah. Next up, I have a classic that I don't hear anybody talking about. This is The Jungle by Upton St. Clair. When I posted my TikTok, everybody who has read this was like, whoa, this one is fucked up. Like, it's messed up. So again, check your trigger warnings. Cannibalism. I've heard all sorts of trigger warnings for this one. In any case, in the jungle, we are following an Eastern European immigrant. He arrives to the US at the start of the 20th century, and he takes this hazardous, very dangerous job at a meat packing plant. And at this meat packing facility, there's all sorts of diseased animals running around. The place is rat infested. There's no labor laws, no regulation. I mean, all sorts of horrid stuff, right? He's essentially exposed to the depravity of mankind. I feel like this is going to offer a lot of commentary on the consequences of capitalism, especially as it pertains to the early immigrant experience, right? And also the necessity for labor laws and labor regulations, both of animals and of workers and employees. So yes, The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. I've heard that it's very, very like disgusting and gross and gory. But yeah, I have this one on my bookshelf. Next up, and I got this one at the thrift store. I forgot to tell you guys the ones that I got at the thrift store. In any case, I picked up 100 Years of Solitude, and a lot of people have said that this is advanced, like advanced. 100 Years of Solitude follows the Buendia family, and they live in this mythical, fictional town that's called Macondo. And apparently it's a multi-generational family saga, and there's this curse that is passed down from generation to generation. And so each new generation continues to be cursed by this one thing, right? This one curse that keeps getting passed down. So I feel like this is going to have a lot of magical realism, maybe supernatural elements. I've heard really good things about Gabriel Garcia Marquez. He is an author that I hear about all the time. And I purchased this one because I want to challenge myself, okay? I like challenging myself as a reader, so that's why I picked up 100 Years of Solitude. Next up, The Count of Monte Cristo. Now, I've heard that this is actually very fun, very dramatic, very cinematic. I don't even know what happens here. I can't even explain the plot, because every single time people try to explain this plot to me, I get so confused. But I purchased this one because my partner, he loves this book. He stands by this book, and a lot of people like this book. So again, it's a case of like FOMO, and also I want to challenge myself because this comes in at over 1,200 pages. So it's not the plot, it's not the subject matter that it feels intimidating. It's the sheer notion that this is over 1,200 pages. So I think that after I'm done East of Eden, I may take a crack at this one, or maybe I'll go with one of the NYRB classics. But I've heard really, really good things about Count of Monte Cristo. It's one of those books that when you finish, you're going to feel very accomplished. So yeah, this one is by Alexander Dumas, and I have the Penguin Classics edition. And last but not least, the final classic that I want to show you guys is the Master and Margarita. Now, I picked this one up for two reasons. One, this is some Russian classic literature. It is a dark satirical comedy that is satirizing Soviet life and making commentary on censorship and art. And that alone intrigued me because I love examining and reading about and learning about Soviet life and the Soviet Union. It's a fascinating time period to explore. So that's one of the reasons why I picked it up. The second reason why I picked this up is because the cover is just so gorgeous. Like, it's so beautiful. I'm trying to pick up this edition because, okay, so my camera decided to overheat. I totally lost my train of thought. But I think that we were talking about Master and Margarita and how much I love the cover. Yeah, like I love the cover. That's another reason why I purchased the Master and Margarita. But anyways, I've heard that it's actually very advanced. I've heard that maybe you should take a crack at other beginner-friendly classics before attempting the Master and Margarita. And then there was someone else on TikTok that said that no, this is actually very readable. So I have no idea. I enjoy reading about Soviet life, the Soviet Union. So I'm not entirely sure. I haven't read it yet. Like I said, I love the cover, and I do have some academic background of the Soviet Union. So yeah, it's a dark satirical comedy. It's all about Soviet life, censorship, art. I am very, very excited for the Master and Margarita. All right, so I believe that would be all in terms of today's video. I think that I got all of the classics in the video. I tend to sometimes like forget 1 to 2 books just because lately I've been on a book buying binge and I can't stop. I won't stop. I'm developing my library. That's precisely why this is all happening. It's always been my dream to have my own home library, walk into a room and there's shelves everywhere with all sorts of amazing, amazing books. So I'm slowly making my way there. I'm probably going to transform my basement into the official home home library. My kids are readers. My partner is a big reader. It's just one of those things that I enjoy spending my money on. But yeah, I do want to thank you for watching the video. I'll see you guys next time. Adios.